Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us here today for our second webinar of our series. Today's topic is talking about how iPaaS makes for a more profitable mergers and acquisitions. Joining us today on the webinar is Gabriel Enright and Mike Kiersey from Workato. So I'm going to hand over to the chaps for them to do a quick introduction, and then we'll get into the webinar.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gabriel Enright. I'm an enterprise architect at Virtuoso Partners. Also done a lot of work with Workato over the years. A bit of work in M&A previously, which I'll discuss later. But looking forward to participating.
Hey, thank you, Gabriel. Hey, everybody. My name is Mike Kiersey. I'm the Global VP of Solution Consulting here at Workato. Similar to Gabe, I've got experiences in doing mergers and acquisitions and divestitures, so this is going to be a good topic for both of us. So without further ado, Josh, we'll hand over to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, chaps. And as I say, we're here today to talk about how iPaaS can help mergers and acquisitions. It's a very common use case and a topic that we're seeing more and more from customers currently in the UK market. So we're going to keep this flowing, and we're going to start off with a few questions. So Mike, Gabe, this question for Mike. In terms of mergers and acquisitions, I think the stat at the moment in the market is 70% of all M&As fail to achieve their intended synergies. Why would you say that integration is still one of the biggest reasons M&As fall short of delivering the value that customers expect, and what typically goes wrong?
There is a multitude of different areas, right? From cultural misalignment of the two different companies. You've got deeply ingrained sort of values on both sides that can have misalignment from that aspect, which can increase sort of friction, lower down collaboration, poor integration, planning and execution, right? Instead of looking this like a tick box that these parts of the business are going to come together, actually you do need a strategic transformational plan, right? And a true large 100-day plan around how you're going to take on that service and how those different functions are going to come together. Maybe some areas is like over focus on the financials and what it's going to cost, right? In terms of two companies coming together versus that of operations, right? Where actually how's the rubber going to hit the road? One of the other key areas are people, right? People in the organization, making sure that the knowledge that's held is retained as part of it. Technology is probably one of the major areas that people do think about a lot, but also think about the IT side of that, the data, the different systems, legacy, incompatibilities, duplication, all of the different platforms that are going to be harmonized together. That is time consuming and it is complicated. And those tend to be the sort of things that come as part of my top sort of thoughts, as much as I would say some of the others. Overestimating of the synergies, right? Actually having a reality check as to what is achievable, right? And how do we look at those and where do we start to make sure that we're delivering the sort of force value? And I think I would recommend is success factors is, you do need a 100-day integration plan, clear accountability, unified sort of cultural strategy, but also a harmonized cookie cutter approach of how you'll bring IT and those different systems together, considering we're talking this through an IT lens today.
Perfect. And you touch on obviously the thought process prior to the M&A. Gabe, what are the challenges that you've seen in the past post merger, and what are the challenges that integration poses, and what are the signs that it's going off track slightly?
Yeah, so I'll just resonate with what Mike said. It comes around people, process, and technology. After you've done the deal, it's time to operationalize things. And what you have is a far bigger beast, far more complex. The people network is duplicated. Now you have two massive groups of people that don't know each other. So if we looked at the people challenges, it's being all our applications that we serve to users are all role-based, and you need access control on those. So the first challenge you can have is how do you get the people in in touch with the right systems, right, to operationalize the change that you want to do, right, so you can realize the benefits. And, you know, there's federation and zero trust, but you need to have a plan, and the plan can pose the challenges. So if I look then at process, now you're doing everything twice, yeah, in most cases. And how do you consolidate that? And that can be quite challenging with the people in the organization. You can get a lot of resistance to that change, you know, where, you know, ranks down the seniority haven't really bought into the whole concept, and making consolidation happens can be a real problem. The last one's information technology. Now you have two of everything. The thing about tech is, you know, it costs a lot to keep it running. So you've got and there's a lot of teams that are embedded within it. So, you know, every month goes by, you have huge duplicate costs that you need to resolve. So they're the challenges, I would say, at a high level from from the coalface that of M&A.
Excellent, thank you, Gabe. And Mike, in terms of iPaaS, the modern approach to M&A nowadays, how does that differ from the traditional integration methods that potential companies have used in the past?
Yeah, it does. It does matter, and I think it's really important for organizations to consider the toolkit of technology that they use as part of this. When you look at some of the priorities, you want rapid system integration, avoid customer disruption, accelerate synergy that Gabe talked about as well. We need scalable infrastructure. You want to accommodate not just this new organization coming on, but more future M&As. Companies don't always just buy one, but acquire a company, wait for that to be synergy, and then acquire another. There could be 3 or 4 happening at any point in time. So you've got to make sure that you've got that scalable infrastructure and technology in place. You need unified data visibility to ensure that you can make faster decisions around what's happening in your landscape. And you need the agility. You need to be able to quickly adapt and change your integration strategy, right, as and when changes happen as part of that program. And when you look at what stands them apart, I think when you look at traditional, we've been very much, you know, hand coding and custom, and that can take months, right? So if you look at iPaaS, it's more low-code technology that provides the speed and power that's needed with pre-built capabilities that allow organizations to take, you know, deployments of months down to weeks and days. The scalability that I touched on, you should be really focusing on platforms that are cloud native to take away the pain of, you know, setting up infrastructure and technology just to do the integration. Also think about the heavy maintenance side, you know, those vendors that provide technology where infrastructure and updates to the platform is all packaged in. You don't need to worry about that. It's a headache that you don't need to think about. Connectivity has always been one in the traditional way, point-to-point brittle connections, you know, managed by code, always needed updating and repairing. Actually, you could use different new patterns as part of it. Hub and spoke model, reusable APIs, event-driven, all brings new capabilities that will allow you to future-proof versus add more technology debt to you have. Data integration, a lot of it's in silos, batch driven in some cases. How do we move to a real time? And I think the last one for me, and Gabe, you talked about this, you know, high cost, right? Typically legacy, resource intensive, whereas actually when you look at iPaaS and futures, right, subscription based, predictable, lower cost of ownership as part of it. And I think they play all to the strengths of what M&A need in terms of rapid onboarding of systems, faster synergy capture, data harmonization and visibility over a period of time, decoupling those legacy applications, right? And bridging that gap where you don't need to do things like rip and replace of those technologies. So, but also more importantly, you know, iPaaS really provides that future-looking view of business-led integration, working with business analysts and technologists to look at where are we going to get the synergy and where do we start as part of a given type of merger.
That's a great insight. Thank you, Mike. We've got a slide up here. It's obviously a reference, one of Workato's customers. I think we've touched on So one of the unique selling points of Workato is the significant amount of time that the platform and the technology can save or can help customers with. Can you touch on a little bit more the slide, the use case, the reference from Broadcom, and talk a little bit about sort of that use case and the time that Workato helped them on their M&A?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone's well aware of who Broadcom is, and a very large organization itself. So one of the areas that they were focused on as part of their M&A capabilities is the rapid ability to onboard and offboard thousands of employees as they come in as part of this. So if you had a small organization, you might just bring users in as individual users, but when you're bringing in thousands of people, it requires different thought process. But when you've got multiple different systems from IT to HR to facilities, you need to automate these processes. And this is what they were looking at. So they had the likes of Workday, ServiceNow, Okta, Active Directory, and many more. And what they needed to do is really sort of bring these into harmonization. And really, this was the overall scope is to provide 90% of this IT provisioning needs to be automated. That was the goal of what they were doing. And when you're trying to do it at that scale, you want to get those benefits of new employees, being acquired into the new company, have immediate access, to the tools and systems that they have in a secure manner. And what we were able to do as part of this is help automate this whole process for them. We save, thousands of man hours in terms of what effort was needed on a month by month basis, reducing those errors, taking away that manual effort, so people can then start looking at the exceptions while the process is sort of running. And really what it allowed them to do is build a cookie cutter approach in terms of faster integration to acquire not just that entity but future entities as we move forward. And now, as you can see on the slide, right, they're significantly faster in terms of how they can provision new users into their organization, and they're going to be operational, right, and delivering value back to the organization in a harmonized way.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Gabe, for customers or organizations that are about to start their M&A journey, typically that will often involve some legacy technologies. Customers will have compliance concerns, and system mismatches. How does Workato accelerate that from day one, and how does that help mitigate those risks, especially around the governance and security, because that will obviously be a high priority for organizations at the start of their journey?
Yeah. So when they start their journey, right, it is a much more complex beast. There's a lot of duplication of things, duplication of cost and complexity in that duplication of people, duplication of process. So I think the diagram says it all. Workato and integration, wider integration, is a great place to bring some order to that chaos. Right, and if you thought about what it would bring you, the big problem with M&A is getting the visibility over the data, over the landscape, so that you can review the evidence and make decisions on which way to take the technology. That's sometimes the biggest challenge. Where if you had a tool, a layer of abstraction, or a way of straddling both those environments, right, so that you could ask and integrate different views of the data to understand, number one, what's going on, and number two, be able to then straddle incoming requests and route them maybe to the right system that needs to deal with them across the two landscapes until you lift and optimize that service, which might be consolidating it into a single system, or even lifting it up to a new cloud service and get rid of those ones. So what iPaaS brings you, when it brings you order, and the Gears framework, right, is the way that you can introduce some IT governance into the mix. And then that really touches every system integration, so it permeates that IT governance. The Gears framework is fantastic for that. And around privacy and security, Workato is a great place to demonstrate that, because it is secure and it is private and it does have SOC 2 compliance reports, and it has been pen tested, and it does comply with HIPAA and GDPR and things like that. So I think in one foul swoop, by getting a good integration strategy and a good automation HQ team together into the mix early in M&A, right, is a huge benefit to bringing that order, giving that visibility, and enabling a bit of versatility and agility, right, to move to better target states that have lower cost.
Great. Mike, question for you with regards to AI. AI is, as we know, is reshaping many enterprise workflows. How are we seeing AI transform integration during M&A events? And off the top of your head, is there any standout use cases that you could talk about?
There's a huge amount of development happening in AI, certainly on the integration, and that is impacting, massively on mergers and acquisitions. I think the first one that comes to mind, and certainly Workato's been doing this as part of our platform, and even with the releases of our agentic sort of framework, is things like automating data mapping, right? Where we used to like map fields and information between different systems that could take weeks of documentation. Now that's AI sort of enabling you, actually prompting you and giving you that, that discover of information, being able to match, reconcile, transform information. It's dramatically, shortening the integration times, reducing human error, unifying what reports would start to look at. So that's like one area that we see from just a technology. But also when you look at that and couple that together around the whole business process, I mean, actually look at how we could optimize how information could flow across the organization, if that is a order to cash, or and it's got dependencies between lots of different systems. Actually, we can start to graphically map and have that conversation, and AI is making that significantly easier in terms of a natural language conversation that people know and understand the process, but might not actually be able to interpret it on the screen. But actually, AI is prompting and helping and support that. Some of the other ones that you might also consider, but maybe not thought about, is things where we actually work and integrate and support, our platform to support other tools. Let's say legal, right? And you're looking at compliancy, and you're looking at contract terms, and integrating different systems, which was, in different document types and Excel spreadsheets. Actually bringing some of this together, will start to provide synergies earlier on. So, integration, as in the technology side, is at the core of what that does. It really does speed up what different lines of business can do, where they can, in that world of legal, start to extract information, classify contract terms, look for anomalies, and actually, report on those and action them, swiftly through AI, without too much, hassle, integration. So it gives them the power and the speed of all of what they want to do, all under one umbrella. And we're helping customers as part of that is to really think about how do they model and how do they leverage AI to actually improve some of the things that they've traditionally done to get greater speed and organizational structure around some of the technologies that they're now sort of bringing together.
That's great, thank you. So for customers that are on the call that are thinking about going down the M&A journey, Gabe, how early should they start thinking about integration, and when should integration be built into their plans?
Yeah, well, immediately is the answer to that. It's really is integration architecture that can identify opportunities for leverage, for arbitrage, opportunities for resolving complex issues, understanding how to qualify and quantify those into packets of work that then can be costed at a high level. That makes you understand the risk a lot earlier of the M&A. So I would say get the integration piece, involved. Well, because who else can tangibly assess the complexity at a low technical level, and who else can point out in detail what the risks and challenges might be? right? So, and that can be very, very handy information at the start of the process, because it can influence how that deal making and how that M&A closure comes together. It's also the tool that gives you the versatility and agility when there are two very brittle and disparate things that need to be pulled together technically. So integration should play a key role very early in the planning of M&A.
Excellent. So as early as possible.
Yeah.
Mike, where do customers tend to see the earliest, the quickest wins post M&A? Where would you point customers to start looking at first?
There's a couple of ways of looking at this, and you could see this as a multi-dimension. I think you've got to look at the integration's priority and strategy as it aligns to the synergy of the overall business. So if it's a cost synergy, maybe you might want to focus on ERP, procurement, human resources, right? They would be the technology areas. But actually, if it's a revenue synergy that you're looking for as a business, maybe prioritization around your CRM, support, marketing, technology approach as part of it. Or if it is, we're doing this and we need to retain all the staff, then you need to nail the human onboarding, the integration between all the different systems to allow people to do that, identity management and access and collaboration tools. But once you've got that sort of defined based on what the business is trying to do, when you look at things like the CRM platforms, right, speed to integration is probably medium. And what you want to do is, typically it might take 90 days to do. Actually, I think with modern based platforms like Workato, you're probably down to about 30 days once you're sort of operational. And that brings a huge amount of strategic value. It brings quick win potential for an organization. And then you can start to go down that stack. So if it's human resources to bring the teams together, it's speed to integrate, probably medium, again, similar strategic value. ERP systems are a lot slower, right? Requires a lot more interim sort of reporting and check and balance. But again, releases a huge amount of value. And I think when you look at those, and you can start to see the value of what we do. And if onboarding someone used to take 4 weeks and it's less than a week, right? We've ticked that box of synergy and value. When we start to look at tickets and the number of tickets that you have from day one, that might be plus 300 because the systems are not talking to each other, we can get that down to 75 a day. Again, another big bonus for the IT organization that they're collapsing down. And really, when you start to package all of that together, typical synergy time sort of plus 12 months, 12 to 18 months, right? Depending on the contractual type and the complexity. But if you're getting early synergy wins within 6 months, right, the business is really starting to harmonize itself. People can start to see the value of what the organization is bringing. People can collaborate, they can cross-sell to the different sides of their organizations, and the information is now truly flowing through both sides of the organization.
That's great. It's really interesting. So Gabe, from a more technical perspective, if enterprise customers are looking to become M&A ready, from an architectural perspective, what do they need to start thinking about earlier on to make them M&A ready?
Yeah, so they have a saying in M&A, if you're selling a car and you don't have a maintenance history and it doesn't have a dashboard, then there's no measurement of the value, and the asset is far less saleable, right? So being M&A ready, even if that's, a future ambition, is very, very important. It's not that difficult to do. Really, M&A in that context is being able to be audited and have the information that will obviously can be assessed, so that people can understand your value, right? And way you can do that from an IT perspective is just build a bit of maturity into the way you operate. Bit of standardization, have a look at design, build, run, what your processes are there. You're probably doing all this anyway. Have them well documented. So if someone was coming in to see an assessment, they could see the IT enterprise was maturely run. Govern it well in the same way. So be in control, have analytics, be able to manage change into the environment, and to be able to react if something happens. happens, build resilience in. Also try and reduce your technical debt, because that's starting to come on the radar. You know, if you have a lot of tech debt in the, because you've done a lot of tactical things, yeah, that will be assessed in due diligence, and you know, that might make you less saleable or saleable for less. Right. So how you can do that is you can use your project pipelines to deliver strategic enablers. If someone needs a feature that's an uplift in identity access management or an uplift in some other capability, we'll do something strategically. Don't do it tactically, because you'll just create more technical debt, right? Optimize your costs, right? Take an inventory of everything you spend, who maintains what, those costs. So do an audit and then do an assessment of them. You'll find there's a lot of things organizations buy in IT that fall off the radar and they just keep getting paid for. So be in control of your cost base. And the final piece of advice, which will be vital, is you need to be flexible, and your architecture needs to be portable. You know, if you come to a position where you're just ready to make a sale, but there is no way of extracting the data out of, you know, systems that are might be sharing with other businesses and things like that, right? It's going to be very, very difficult to port the business to the people who've acquired it or the people that want to merge it. Flexibility, you know, that comes in and around how you operate the business, right? If you will never change a requirement, or you can't adapt your requirement to something else, then you're going to be inflexible. So just be flexible there. That's it.
Flexible. Great. Okay. Well, I think we started a couple of minutes after, so we've probably got time for one final question. But it's been fascinating to hear your thoughts and get your insights. So thank you. But in terms of sort of maybe sharing a before and after example where M&A integration has moved from a manual and reactive to automated and scalable. Do you both, is there an example that you can both think of off the top of your head that could maybe sort of wrap this up for us?
I have one. It's not really a specific example, but it's a very good understanding of where we've come in technology to support M&A. So 17 years ago, I worked in Australia, and Vodafone. I was an enterprise architect at Vodafone Australia. And I'd also been an engineer in Hutchison, Australia, with 3Mobile, who built the first 3G network in the world. I was working for Ericsson at the time. And those companies merged. So that was the first Vodafone 3 merger 17 years ago in Australia. Now, to do that then with the technology and the techniques that you had, you needed a lot of people, you needed a lot of smart people, and then it was even difficult to grant them access to the system so that they could get in and do the assessments, the people problem I mentioned before. The latest and greatest technology we had was a Google box, which we used to actually index the systems and things privately, and then you'd have a search interface to try and make sense, right? And then if you swing now to what's happened very recently, Vodafone and 3 emerging again, but here in the UK. And I happen to know what, you know, that Workato's in the mix there somehow. But if you looked at the tooling that you have now to do a merger and acquisition and leverage a tool like Workato, you know, all of a sudden you can use system integrators, those people trying to find the information, they're building integrations, right? That's taking you forward. Workato's made some great steps in AI with Workato Go, which would give you a console into the two stacks of information and would bring together your understanding of where there's overlaps and where there's opportunities. And all that can be set up in a very short space of time. So rather than a case study, that's how the technology has improved and adapted, and M&A's never been easier, or it shouldn't be you know, any more difficult than it was, because these tools are all in play.
I think just to add to that, Gabe, I think you're spot on. There's sort of an example. I can't really name the customer or the companies. But when mergers do happen, obviously there's a lot of due diligence and pre-work that goes in as part of that. One of the areas that you never get to see due to confidentiality of customer contracts is the quality of the data. You'll know that they've got a CRM system and this, that, and the other. It's only once that piece of paper is signed and you can actually legally see that. You don't know the quality of information and how some of those systems interact at that point in time. To get to your point, you've gone through that discovery. You need to find out, and you might find the systems there that you can't connect to, or the data is just of shocking quality and difficult to manipulate. And at least with platforms like Workato is the efficiency of what we bring in, that agility allows you to think about, hey, I don't have to think about the complexity of how I'm going to get the data. There's numerous patterns we can do, but with the smart connectivity, it allows us to get going fast. Then we can start inspecting where some of that data is, or we can leverage data management capabilities to start looking at cleansing some of that before we move it into the system. So there's a lot of good things that are happening as part of iPaaS that's really moved the needle, that things that you are unaware of and will not know until that paper is dry, and that's specifically around the data piece.
And you could get agents to do all that work, couldn't you, Mike? That's the point.
Yep.
We had to use a lot of people, and very smart people, and they had to do a lot of reading. And now with agentic AI, you can in natural language give it tasks to go out and do and find things in, if it can get the system context, and that can hugely accelerate and enhance your decision making as you're moving to your new target.
Absolutely. It lowers risks, it provides the ability, and it really gives confidence in terms of hitting those synergistical dates that the business is driving for.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, chaps. It's probably all we've got time for today, but I guess just as a wrap up and some takeaways from my perspective. So it sounds like integration iPaaS is absolutely paramount for customers that are looking to embark on an M&A journey. I think that it's pretty safe to say that the earlier they start to think about iPaaS, the better. And yeah, I think hopefully we've demonstrated and provided some confidence to customers and organizations that are on this webinar that we've got a lot of experience and expertise when it comes to M&A across the world. So yeah, for anyone that's joining that is about to embark on that journey, or for anyone that is in the process of going through that journey, then and they need some help, or they would like to understand more, take a deeper dive into their actual own situation, then we would be more than happy to help. We will offer out sort of free one-to-one sessions with Mike and Gabe off the back of this webinar. So please do reach out to myself. I think my email address is on this final slide. As I said at the start of the session, this is webinar 2 of a series that we're running for the rest of this year. So please do keep an eye out for the next one coming the following month. Again, around iPaaS, but for a different topic. So yeah, that concludes today's webinar. Gabe, Mike, thanks again so much for your support and for your words of wisdom. It's been really insightful and impactful. And yeah, look forward to seeing everyone on the next one. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.